So good afternoon. Apologize for the delay. Welcome to the meeting of the Advisory Committee on Arlington National Cemetery. I am Renee Yates. I have the honor of being the committee's designated federal official. This is an open meeting, and present in person are the esteemed committee members, Mr. Matt Davis, our alternate designated federal officer, and Major Tommy Galloway, the Office of Army Cemeteries Information Technology Officer. This is an open virtual meeting and is pursuant to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, codified in 10 U.S.C. 7723. The committee operates under the authority of the provisions of the National Defense Authorization Act, codified in 10 U.S.C. 7723, Federal Advisory Committee Act of 1972, Chapter 10, 5th U.S. Code, the Sunshine and Government Act of 1976, and the 41st Code of Federal Regulations. Arlington National Cemetery is the agency that receives the benefit of the committee's advice and recommendations, and the designated federal officer nominated by the executive director is appointed by the administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army. ANC provides all administrative support to the committee. Once again, this meeting is open to the public virtually. However, members of the public are asked not to speak or ask questions from the floor to any issue under direct discussion by the committee without the prior approval of the chairperson. If you have not done so, I would ask all of our guests to ensure that cameras are inactive and their microphones remain muted. The public joining us virtually is asked to place their name in the chat, your full name please, in the chat in order for us to record your participation in this open meeting. Members of the public who requested to be recognized. If you request to be recognized, please do so by raising your hand or wait until called upon by the approved chairman. If you don't have the raise the hand feature, please put it in the chat. Members of the public were eligible to file written statements or requests to make verbal presentations in accordance with the published Federal Register notice. Members of the committee have been provided the over 600 statements that we received as of this meeting date, and we have several requests here today to make presentations to the committee. We have 17 new individuals and 12 who have presented to this committee in the past. I will defer to the chairman at the appropriate time to determine if the members of the public will be called upon by name during that portion of the meeting allotted for public statements. The Federal Register notice can be found on the ANC website at www.arlingtoncemetery.mil. The proceedings are being digitally recorded, and a summary in written form will be made available to the public on the ANC website. It is my honor to introduce the chairman, Mr. James Peak. We also have our co-chairman, former Congressman Mr. Chet Edwards, here. Mr. Chairman.
So we'll call the committee to order and would ask the DFO to conduct the roll call.
Secretary of the Army nominees, Mr. James Peak, Mr. Chet Edwards, here. Mr. Gene Castanetti,
Here.
Miss Ann Harrell,
Here.
Mr. Thomas Kelly is on virtually. Sir, are you there?
Muted.
Mr. Kelly, sir, can you hear us?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Mark Farley.
Here.
Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission nominee, Mr. Gerald Torrance.
Here.
Secretary of the Veterans Administration nominee, Ms. Rosemary Freitas-Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, based on the members in attendance today, we have 100%.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all of you for attending, who are members of the public as well. We've got a pretty busy agenda for today with 2 committee reports, an education update, a master planning briefing, and a southern expansion briefing. So we'd like to move on. Chet, do you have any comments?
No.
Opening comments? Okay. With that, Ms. Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, please note the approved minutes from our March 23 meeting are in your binders, and they are also all posted on our website. As was stated, the agenda today includes our reports from each of the subcommittees with 3 informational briefings requested during our March meeting, as well as a period for public comments at the end. We received requests to speak to the committee on 2 different topics. Most of the requests are to speak on the Confederate memorial removal action, and one related to eligibility and military funeral honors. I'd like to note for the committee that ANC published the required notice of intent for our removal action of the Confederate Memorial. The notice of intent is for the initiation of the public engagement period, scoping period for Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, and for our environmental impact statement as part of the National Environmental Policy Act. That notice was published on 4 August, and the information is all available on our website. It is the beginning of our public engagement process, and we are seeking comments from the public and interested parties to be consulting parties for the 106 process and the coordinating parties for the NEPA process. There is a portal on our website where comments can be added to the conversation, and we're collecting any and all comments we can receive. The main message is the public is encouraged to provide comments via that link. And additionally, our first public meeting will be on 23 August at 1900 in the evening. More information is available on our website. And if you'd like, I can ask the website to be brought up now to show you that so that you're aware before we begin today's discussions.
I'd like to do that, but I would also like to make it very clear that the process that, and this on the 3rd of August that Renee has talked about is not a part of this committee. This is outside the bounds of this committee and part of a really a well-defined process of which we are not a part. So that's different than the public comments we will hear later on today, and I look forward to hearing those comments. But I just wanted to make that clarification.
For clarification, the written comments that have been received will be added to the public comments that we're collecting across all platforms on our website.
And for the 23rd meeting at 1900,
Yes, ma'am.
how are we able to join this?
So there will be a media public notice meeting out, and our website is the most important place to go. There will be a link to how to register to attend that meeting.
And that will be as an individual as opposed to
As this
Sure.
committee. So that's kind of the point I wanted to make. And if you want to show that website, that'd be great,
Yep.
Matt.
Matt's, I think, bringing it up.
Bring it up. All right, so
While he's bringing that up, I'll want to highlight, just so everybody understands what the process we're in. The purpose of the proposed action that we put our notice of intent for is the removal of the ANC monument that commemorates the Confederate States of America. The need for the proposed action is to comply with the non-discretionary congressional direction to do so as part of the naming commission. The removal of Confederate Memorial will be conducted in a manner that ensures the safety of the people who work at ANC and visit ANC and protects the surrounding graves and monuments. The entire process, including disposition, must occur according to applicable laws, policies, and regulations. Our environmental impact statement will look at the impacts of the removal of the statue atop the monument, disassembly of the bronze elements, and disposition of both. And we reiterate, we're leaving the granite base and foundation in place. And we are going to look at the potential adverse impacts associated with this action. All right, so when you come up on our website, which should be showing now to everyone, Matt, if you can click Learn More. Either you can click on that one or over at the other side. Our the landing page for the Confederate Memorial comes up. If you click on that, we want to hear from you. This is the place where you can leave your public comments associated with the process. Slide down that just to show that it's a fillable form. All that about the legal jargon, and stop right there a second. Scoop up just a little bit. So for the National Environmental Protection Act, EIS, we're seeking comments on the identification or significant environmental issues and identification of potential impacts. And for the Section 106, which is the Historic Preservation Act, areas of potential effects, the identification of historic properties, and the National Register eligibility. Thank you, Matt. Can you go back to the main webpage? Then I want to ask you to slide down to go back to the landing page. You should be able to just the other page. There you go. Slide down. Up and show me the diagram. Show our process diagram, please. Right there. So on our webpage, we have a diagram that is going to show, communicates to the public, the process for which we are using. The highlighted yellow arrows over a block show where we are in the process. So I know most of the members can't read that from here, but it is all on our website and you're able to see that and follow our process as we move through both of these laws and policies we have to follow. Are there any questions about that? Okay.
Our next item of business is an update, Mark, from the Remember and Explore Subcommittee, please.
Yes.
Our next opportunity for that agenda item is to solicit the speakers from the public. And so we have turn it over to Renee to manage that process. We've had a number that have spoken before, so we're putting them at the last, so we have a limited amount of time. We have two topics, with one being the eligibility, and so we'll hear from that first. And then the others are related to the Confederate Memorial. So Renee, if you could move on with that.
All right, so as was stated, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to open the floor for approximately 30 minutes to the members of the public who requested to present to the committee in accordance with published Federal Register notice. Mr. Davis, I'm going to ask you to actually bring up the teams. Thank you. And I'm going to ask anyone who's not speaking to have your camera off, please. Mr. Kelly, please leave your camera on. Those of you that have not been called on to speak, please turn your cameras off so we can focus on the individual speaking. Matt, can you close out the recording? Again, I would ask if you have your camera on, please turn it off until you're called on. Okay, so as the chairman has said, we're going to allow those who have not previously provided comments to this committee to present first, followed by those from which request was already received. Before I begin, I'm going to ask the public to be respectful of the time and manner of your presentation, noting that at any time, if the discussion becomes disruptive, inappropriate, or beyond the time limit, we will need to ask the speaker to be muted. We ask that each member of the public, when called upon by name, please introduce yourself, and you'll have approximately 1 minute to speak in order to allow those who have also requested to speak as well. We will provide speakers a 30-second warning in the Teams chat feature. I'm going to ask my support staff to make sure that occurs. I'm going to apologize in advance for any mispronunciations of any names. At this time, I'd like to begin with Mr. Ken Greenberg.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Yates. I appreciate it. And my name is Ken Greenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish War Veterans of the USA. I've also had a long career with the Department of Veterans Affairs, with being there for over 33 years, and I've been in the Veterans VSO space for 6 years. I'm here to talk and represent the Retired Affairs Committee of the Military Coalition. 28 organizations are supporting the Expanding National Cemeteries Act, HR 1413. It deals with expansion and the support for transforming an existing national cemetery to sustain military family honors provided at Arlington. This is because of the proposal to restrict eligibility from the proposed rule that was proposed about a year ago. We are deeply concerned that women veterans will lose their place to be eligible for burial at Arlington, as will many World War II and Vietnam veterans that are retirees. We think it's really important that another option be available, and we hope that you guys will consider supporting the legislation, or at least having an open opportunity to have expansion where VA and DOD can work together. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Ken, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will have Philip Logan. Mr. Philip Logan. We're going to go on to Mr. William Nat. Mr. William Nat. Miss Diane Hullett. Miss Diane Howlett. Mr. Ron Moore. Mr. Ron Moore. Brigadier General retired John Scales.
Yes, thank you. My name is John Scales. As said, I was retired from the military. I'm also an author who has written several books about the American Civil War, praising people on both sides. It pains me greatly to hear so-called modern historians steeped in neo-Marxism to see everything in simplistic terms of absolute good and absolute evil, when actual deep study reveals that there's a fair amount of each on either side. I do not know if you have the power to save the Confederate Memorial at Arlington, but I hope that you will protest being offered no real role in the decision and seek to have it overturned. Ambrose Bierce, a Union veteran of vicious battles, including the jungle hell of Pickett's Mill in Georgia, heard of people who protested the placing of flowers on Confederate graves. This acclaimed writer wrote a poem in rebuttal, which included these words: "The brave respect the brave respect the dead, but you draw that ancient blade, the ass's jaw, and shake it over a hero's grave. Who does not love the harmless dead with all his heart and all his head? May God forgive him, I shall not." And I can't say it any better than that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Randall Cook, or Crook. Randall Crook. Curtis Pasquale. Curtis Pasquale. Bruce Cunningham. Bonnie Bruce.
Can we, for just a second, can you, are any of these names?
Hello?
Bonnie Bruce, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Bonnie Bruce, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. And it's been very fascinating and interesting to listen to y'all discuss. And I appreciate how much you value and take the time to protect Arlington Cemetery. I'm a private citizen, although my family dates back to before the Revolutionary War. I'm both an American and a Southerner, and I'm very proud of both. I would like to address the fact that this whole trend of destroying Confederate monuments based on the fact that they were racist, I feel this lie has to die. The fact is there were many slaves, but there were many Southerners who did not own slaves. I feel like it's extremely important to address and rectify how our Americans with slave heritage should be praised and recognized and appreciated. But at the same time, watching people who consider themselves to be historians destroying history is a trend that I find appalling. And I would very much like for the monument to stay, the name of these streets to stay, and let's create a unique place for our Black Americans, for which they have every right to be proud of their contribution to this country. I was in the DAR, and I was appalled at that time to find out that our Black ladies could not join because of the fact that their ancestors were slaves. They often did not have the documentation that they needed to join the DAR, and that was one of the reasons, and the big reasons, that I left the DAR. I just want to say that if you want to have unity, then let's unify and stop this divisive hate mongering of Southerners and remind ourselves that families were divided. There
Ma'am, I'm
was
sorry, you're-
reconciliation
Ma'am, I'm
because of
sorry, your
families
time
being on
expired.
both sides. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. John Lebanon?
Zeppelin.
Levelin?
Zeppelin.
Eveline?
With a C?
Yep, Zeppelin?
Yes, good afternoon.
Sorry
Can you
about
hear
that,
me?
sir. Go ahead, sir.
Are we on?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, retired now, and I'm appalled at the actions to take down the Confederate monument there in Arlington. I've been there several times. I was surprised to find out that the monument is even a candidate for removal because the naming commission was only changing the names of bases that were named for Confederates. But we certainly haven't taken any action to close what was Fort Benning or what was Fort Hood or Fort Lee, AP Hill, any of those. But yet, for some reason, we're hell-bent on taking down the Confederate monument. And that isn't a good idea. Reason being, all the services are hurting for recruits right now. And many of those recruits come because of guys like me who encourage their sons, grandsons, nieces, and nephews to join the military. And I can assure you that isn't happening in the South right now, because when you've changed the names and now you're going after the monuments to the dead, for goodness sake, what in the world are people thinking? Who the heck is going to recommend joining the military when you're not honoring the dead veterans, for crying out loud? So if you all have any influence on this, you got to stop this, because it certainly isn't going to help the recruiting situation. I can guarantee you that. And when the next war comes, and you can bet that just as sure as God made little green apples, you're not going to see many guys from the South coming forward. So thank you for your time. Good day.
Thank you, sir. Reed Walker?
God, read little green apples.
Reed Walker? Mr. Walker, we see that you're on. Can you hear us? So I'll come back to you. Mary Rose Kelly? David West? Mr. West, I see you're on. Would you like to speak? Come back to you, sir. Pam Gill? Pam Gill? Mike Hewlett? We're going to go back to Mr. Walker. Can you hear us? Mr. Reed Walker. Mr. David West. Okay.
We started a few minutes early, so just.
We'll come back to him, sir. We've got a few more folks.
Okay.
So H. Edward Phillips. H. Edward Phillips. Stuart Schimler,
Yes, I'm here.
go ahead,
Yes.
sir.
Thank you. My name is Stuart Schimler. I'm from Bloomfield, New Jersey. I do not have any ancestors who fought for the Union or for the Confederacy, but I am against the illegal removal of the New South Monument at Arlington National Cemetery for two primary purposes. It is outside of the remit that the Congress gave to the Naming Commission. They were only allowed to go after individuals who had assets named after them if those individuals voluntarily served, or if an asset honored the Confederate States of America. This monument does neither. Also, grave markers were to be excluded. I want to read to you from Moses Ezekiel's funeral, a statement made by Warren G. Harding, the Republican president from the state of Ohio. At Ezekiel's funeral in 1921, he is buried at the base of the memorial. Harding said, and I quote, "He turned his thoughts to his own country, and as the final and finest product of his talents, gave to us the monument that from this day will mark his resting place." Who says it's a grave marker? President Harding. That's a pretty good source. Harding goes on to say, quote, "It is a memorial of a reunited America, the testimony to the tradition of an indissoluble union, the shrine to which we are gathered today." Harding says that. An indissoluble union. It doesn't honor the Confederate States of America. However,
Your time has expired.
I'm sorry?
Your time has expired, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna go back. Mr. West, I see you have your hand up. Mr. David West, sir. So you're still showing you're muted. Mary Stevens? Mary Stevens? David McAllister? Oh, Mary Stevens, are you there? We can see you. Can you unmute your mic, ma'am?
Okay, now I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Yes. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts is responsible for the establishment of the Naming Commission and targeted the monument in Arlington and military bases. But Senator Warren fails to acknowledge that slavery was legalized in 1641 by Governor John Winthrop of Massachusetts Bay Colony. Massachusetts has a statue to Governor Winthrop in our nation's statuary hall that should be removed. In fact, the first American slave ship was built in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and slaves were sold in Charlestown, Massachusetts, near Boston. Those states who brought slaves to America were New York, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. These New England states made a fortune off the slave trade business, and the Confederate States should be recognized because they brought no slaves to America. And Senator Warren should stop trying to make the Confederate States pay for the sins of Massachusetts and other New England states. Keep the Reconciliation Monument in Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to go back. William Gant, I see you're on now. Would you like to take your 1 minute, sir, to speak?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I love my country, more than anything. I think our story is a great one. It's a unique one. It's should be cherished, and all of it, the good and the bad parts of it. My thing is, I have a son, a 16-year-old son, and our plan this whole time was when he, graduates high school to go into the military. That we think that's an honorable thing in our family. We've done it since the, revolution. And how do I explain to him that he's about to go fight for a government and a country that thinks his ancestors, his grandfathers are unworthy of remembrance? How can I, in good faith, let him go and do that when, 100 years from now, what kind of judgment is going to be passed on even our recent wars, Iraq and Afghanistan? Are they going to look at it as, we were going to inferior nations and trying to push on democracy, a political system that they did not want? I mean, you can't judge a person by today's standards. And I think that the fringe minority that want this thing gone, where are they? Are they anywhere on this speaker thing? I mean, I just got on, I know, but you don't see any outcry. The people that I talk to day to day, complete strangers, they have no quarrels with our monuments or our history.
Sir, your time has expired, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right. I would please urge the committee to do what they can to keep this monument, to keep our history intact, and beautiful art. It's
Thank you,
it's
sir.
just a shame.
Mr. West, we're gonna try one more time, Mr. West. I see you came back in. So we're going to go on to Mr. McAllister.
Good afternoon. Am I on?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm David McAllister, committee members, and I'm with the Friends of Judah P. Benjamin. He's probably the most famous American Jewish man of the 19th century, lawyer, senator, cabinet member, and today is his birthday. I'd like to express our distress that the most famous and important sculpture of Jewish artist Sir Moses Ezekiel might be moved from the place it was uniquely made for, the Reconciliation Memorial. To us, this borders on anti-Semitism in its current iteration. Not only is it his masterpiece, it is also his grave marker, as we heard, as he is buried right beneath it and so is beyond the scope of the Naming Commission remit. You need to report this and also to correct the misleading content that's on the website, the Arlington National Cemetery website. I hope this will make it into the final version. Artistically, this is an excellent representation of the American Renaissance style of public art, and it would be an act of barbarism and vandalism to remove it from its site, whatever one thinks of its allegorical style. It was made for this place and for this purpose, reconciliation. In the words of Rabbi Robinson, this is an only in America moment. Please respect this and honor this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. West, we're going to try one more time, sir. Mr. West?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't get my mic and my camera to work earlier, so I do apologize for that. I did try, I had to get back in. Well, the reason I want to speak is I do also want to address the Reconciliation Memorial. As a Southern gay man, I'm concerned by its possible destruction because, of course, Moses Ezekiel was gay. And I don't know what sort of message that sends to the country to destroy a memorial that was created by a gay sculptor, well-renowned. My husband, when we were legally married, was an Air Force veteran. He had descendants on both sides, or ancestors on both sides of the war. I had only on the Confederate side. But I know that this is a great concern for us here in the South, and especially for minorities like me, being a gay Southerner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. H.K. Egerton? H.K. Egerton? Linnell Siegel? I thought she was on, correct?
She's on.
Ms. Siegel? Ma'am? Thank you, ma'am. John Coffindaffer? Mr. Coffindaffer? Mr. Kirk Lyons? Muted. Sir, you're still muted, sir?
This is John. Can you hear me, please?
Is this Mr. Coffindaffer, sir?
It is.
Mr. Lyons, I'm going to ask you to wait 1 minute. We'll let Mr. Coffindaffer go ahead. Go ahead,
Thank
sir.
you. This is Lieutenant Colonel John Coffindaffer, United States Air Force, retired Combat Air Rescue, Jolly Greens. There was a lot of talk today in the previous meetings about preserving the history and the iconic image of Arlington National Cemetery, America's most sacred and hallowed ground. Is removing the Reconciliation Memorial or any memorial the image that Arlington wants to portray nationally and both internationally? With the renaming of Jackson Circle, the potential removal of the Reconciliation Memorial, the removal of the felons buried there in Arlington, which I heard earlier today is going to take place, is the removal of Confederate remains, the graves, next to free up the ever-diminishing availability of space there at Arlington. In regards to the public having knowledge of the Reconciliation Memorial's removal, do you believe that posting it on the Arlington Facebook or webpage is sufficient to notify the public? Everyone I've talked with about this has no idea anything is being removed from Arlington. Their expression is wide-eyed open, mouth open, jaw dropped, more times than not. And they ask me, "Are you serious? This is Arlington? That this is going to happen?" What are they thinking? In short, the removal of what first reunited our country will end up further dividing our nation into unrepairable harm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kirk Lyons, sir?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, sir. Sir, you put yourself back on mute. We heard you.
Am I back? Am I off mute?
Yes, you are, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about Moses Ezekiel's masterpiece, the Confederate Reconciliation Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. My name is Kirk D. Lyons, and I am from Black Mountain, North Carolina. I am descended from over 16 family members who wore the gray in 1861 to 1865, and who are apparently now considered traitors by the Naming Commission and Secretary of Defense Austin. Secretary Austin's order to remove or demolish the Reconciliation Memorial is illegal. The memorial serves as the headstone for Ezekiel and 3 other veterans. Being a headstone puts it beyond the so-called Naming Commission's mandate. As an exercise in so-called government speech, which is never mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, by the way, Austin's act is tyrannical. The memorial belongs to we the people, not the government. Y'all are the stewards only. If asked, an overwhelming majority of we the people would say, leave it alone. Demolishing it is a crime against art and humanity, and if committed by the Nazis in the 1940s, would have been prosecuted at Nuremberg. It's also a rampant act of anti-Semitism, as Ezekiel was the first internationally renowned Jewish American sculptor. Hearing the Army historian talk about reconciliation as a thinly disguised mask for white supremacy indicates only her extreme bias and would be laughable if it did not promote a Marxist agenda in view of history. At the subcommittee meeting this morning, a member said, as a subcommittee, we can recommend anything we like. Well, be brave and act on that. Reject cancel culture that only divides Americans from other Americans. Please recommend that the Confederate Reconciliation Memorial at Arlington Cemetery be neither demolished or removed, but saved and preserved. And by the way, leave Jackson Circle's name in place as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Edwin Kennedy?
Audio check, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Ed Kennedy, Jr. I'm a retired Army officer. I wish to thank you for letting me speak, especially General Pete, who indulged my correspondence on this matter to him. I'm an Army X5 X-ray historian with 19 years of active and retired duty on the graduate faculty of the Army Staff College. I've taught thousands of military officers history and continue to educate them on staff rides to battlefields. Unlike Ty Seigel, whose history degree is in World War I studies, I am well versed in the Civil War, which I continue to teach. I will start by addressing comments on the last meeting and this one today. First, not a single Confederate was ever tried or convicted for treason. Continuing to call them traitors is opinion, not fact. I heard a member talk about the message of Arlington. How about reconciliation? Reconciliation for Confederates to be buried alongside their former Union Army foes. How about that message? Anti-Semitism is growing. As graduate of the Israeli Army Commander's Course, I follow this issue and watch how we talk about both sides of our mouth on this issue. Shabbat Shalom. World-renowned sculptor, yes, Confederate veteran Ezekiel Moses' memorial is targeted for destruction. Our own Jewish American veteran citizen. Anti-Semitism indeed. I was most disappointed at the last meeting when questions and comments directly addressed those issues in a book provided to all the members regarding the Reconciliation Memorial. The book has tons of historical information. It was not read, which is a shame. For years after the war, both Union... Sorry?
Your time's expired. Do you have one last sentence, sir?
Yes, I was going to say after the war, Union and Confederate soldiers reconciled. General Joe Johnston caught pneumonia as a pallbearer of his wartime nemesis, General Sherman. They had reconciled. Thousands of others did the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Terry Kilma, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak for a few moments. I'm a proud descendant of a Confederate veteran, and I have to respectfully ask, is this a naming commission or a defaming commission? We are not talking about renaming the monument, but rather removing the monument. Have we removed military bases and ships? Has Fort Hood been disassembled? We as a group have to recall that Confederates are American military veterans. They were eligible for pensions, government burials, and markers. Where will this end as far as who will be the next low-hanging group of veterans, the low-hanging fruit that we will try to demean? Will it be the U.S. colored troops for participating in the genocidal actions against the Native Americans? Interesting to speak of the Confederates, but it was Harry Truman, who was actually a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans when he was president. He was the one that actually desegregated the United States military in 1945. So I think we need to start getting away from this divisiveness and start trying to unite. And if you don't like the name of the monument, rename it, but certainly don't remove it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Gene Kaiser?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for your service. I'm Gene Kaiser, Jr. of Charleston Athenaeum Press. when the Ranger Memorial in former Fort Benning was desecrated by the same legislation that threatens the 109-year-old Confederate Memorial in Arlington National Cemetery, Brigadier General Joseph S. Stringham, chairman of the National Ranger Memorial Foundation, wrote to his Rangers and said, "The Naming Commission's recommendations are without verification. Implementation of dramatic radical edicts and shifts in policy at issue here are frequently accompanied by inaccuracies, stupid interpretations, injustices to survivors, and a strong political slant offensive to substantial sectors of society. That is also the case with the Confederate Memorial. The Naming Commission submitted a false report on the Confederate Memorial. The Confederate Memorial should not be in its remit. The Confederate Memorial does not commemorate the Confederacy, unless you think that is why Barack Obama sent his annual memorial wreath to the Confederate Memorial. Obama and all presidents since Teddy Roosevelt were celebrating the reconciliation and reunification of the United States of America after a war in which 750,000 died and over 1 million were maimed. The reconciliation theme is irrefutable and in ANC's own documents repeatedly. Demolishing the world-class Confederate monument surrounded by 518 graves will desecrate those graves forever and dishonor every Southerner who has ever bled and died for our great nation. It
Sir,
will
your time
stay
has expired.
in Arlington National Cemetery for all time. We should not act like the Taliban. We are Americans.
Sir, your time's expired, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wade Alfred. Wade Alfred. Go ahead, sir.
I believe this morning in a subcommittee hearing, had a so-called historian who's spewing out a false narrative about slavery, and when I brought it up, I was threatened to be removed, and I did it in a text message, the chat feature, and you're just people are shutting us down. There's been no press coverage. There's nothing in your website that says Defend Arlington, a grassroots organization, is suing you. It mentions the SCV, so you're trying to narrow the narrative there. This false narrative needs to stop now, or there's going to be more division than ever before. There are 81 million Confederate descendants in this country. That's not a number of people that need to be angered. This is our money at stake, our history, and every family now owes $900 to the government for what's going on in Ukraine. You got bases in South Georgia that are eating up with mold. We got better places to spend the money. This illegal and immoral sectionalist activity needs to be stopped, or history's going to repeat itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Randall Cook. Crook. Mr. Crook, sir? Mr. Crook, sir? I see Allison Katzman.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I am very disturbed at this. There's not words to express.
Where'd you go?
You're back on
Ma'am, you
mute.
muted yourself.
Okay, hello?
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. As a Jewish American and a Southerner, I am very much hoping that the Moses Ezekiel grave can be maintained. I realize it doesn't fit a narrative. Growing up as in Virginia, and we'd go to the north and we hear a lot of things about the South and how and stereotypes, and yet I sometimes encountered more anti-Semitism in the North. I'm not saying it wasn't anywhere. Moses Ezekiel's grave also doesn't fit the narrative because he wasn't on the quote unquote correct side that a Jew is supposed to be on. So it's extremely disturbing now. I also live in Arlington, Virginia. It's very disturbing to have my community and my U.S. military seeking to destroy what doesn't conveniently fit in a box. And it just reminds me of really Stalinist Russia or the Nazis. And there's really not words to express that. I'm just hoping, everything I've heard so far today seems to be a lot of bureaucracy about how the committee has been tasked to take this monument down and rename basis. I mean, we're all part of the United States and of American society at this point, too.
Ma'am, your time's expired.
Very much.
Thank you. Mr. Randall Crook, we're going to try one more time. Mr. Randall Crook. And finally, Mr. Barney Bishop.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for taking the testimony. I've been watching y'all. You seem to all be paying attention and appreciate that. But having been a lobbyist here in Florida for 45 years and have sat on some committees similar to what y'all are sitting on, I dare say that none of this testimony that you've heard today is going to change any one of your single opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I dare say that I'm not. I will say this. I think it's immoral, unethical to do anything with the Reconciliation Monument. Why? First, Arlington National Cemetery was started because when Robert E. Lee, after he graduated from West Point, decided to work for the South, they confiscated his property. That was the beginning of Arlington National Cemetery. It wasn't until many years after the Civil War that Robert E. Lee's family, when they took a case that went all the way to U.S. Supreme Court, were compensated for that. Nevertheless, that was property belonging to Robert E. Lee. The United States confiscated it, which they had the right to do. I don't question that. But the point of the fact is, it seems sacrilegious and nothing but political correctness to take away the Reconciliation Monument when Arlington National Cemetery was on Southern land to begin with. I will tell you that there were 151 people that graduated from West Point that served in the Southern Confederacy. There were 95 Annapolis graduates that served in the Southern Confederacy. Ladies and gentlemen, not a single one of those institutions are wiping out any names. They're not denying that any of those people served their country. Arlington National Cemetery is for U.S. servicemen. U.S. servicemen. It doesn't matter what side they served on. So don't let political correctness and woke compel you to make a decision that becomes a precedent that wouldn't stand any kind of scrutiny, because no other institution is trying to do this, not even our own military, with respect to the people that served with valor.
Sir, your time's expired.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Crook, we're going to give you one more try. Mr. Crook. You need to unmute yourself, sir. He's gone. Get back in first. Yes. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to have to cease our public comment period. Thank you for your public comments and your participation. All of your statements will be recorded for the record.
Yeah, I know we're about 5 minutes over the time. I'm not sure what everybody's calendar looks like, but if in terms of the comments about what we would be doing as a next step, we have, maybe a draft for us to consider, and maybe we can consider today, or maybe we need to set up another time to do it.
It's up to the committee's time, sir. We don't have to end at the moment.
Okay. So Matt, why don't you put that up? But we've heard them, the public comment talk about, well, what is the next steps? And it seems to me we've heard a lot of information. Can you scroll down? So if we were to...
So let me share it.
He has to share it.
Okay. Yeah, so one of our opportunities or abilities is to be able to send a report to the Secretary of the Army. And, if you just sort of summarize the background, we heard about this at our first meeting. We didn't take public comment then because it was really an information briefing. You can wordsmith any of this as far as I'm concerned, but it's just to get something down on paper for us to look at. You want to slide down, please? And so this just explains the background of what we did. We referred it to the Remember and Explore Subcommittee. They came back to us on the 23rd of March with the kind of the summary. And so I thought maybe we'd summarize what we've heard to include today, and I've taken some notes and added them in here. So next, can you slide down, please? So, the written materials, and we can get the exact numbers because we got 3 PDFs in just this meeting. So there's literally hundreds of information documents sent to us, to include bound documents that Colonel Kennedy talked about as an example. Many appear to be templated letters promulgated by a variety of organizations, and this is probably not a complete list, but we heard comments at 3 different times now, and we can get the kind of the numbers of that. But I think part of this is it's our obligation to let the Secretary know what we're hearing here. All of the written and oral communications were in opposition to the removal. None were in favor, as somebody brought up. The rationale given can be summarized, I think, in several categories. Can you slide down? And there's more to be added, from our input today. And this was sort of a summary of the kind of categories of comments that we've heard. The history of the monument being placed with the support of 3 presidents and so forth. That the removal would dishonor those Confederate soldiers buried at Arlington, and by extension, their descendants who have subsequently fought honorably in our nation, all of our nation's conflicts. And I think we could add in here the notion that this could impact recruiting is what we've heard a couple of times also. So I would amend that number 2 there. Yeah. Did you have something, Mark?
I think another one that's missing from the first session was the majority of those people said it was out of the naming conditions.
We'll get to that. I agree with you. And then concern there's a lack of public participation in the naming. That's come up a number of times. Noting that the artists, to get to the anti-Semitic, the notion that this is anti-Semitic. And I think I agree with you, Mark, that we need a number 5 there that talks about the feeling this is outside the remit of the naming commission, largely because of the some people's belief that this does represent a grave marker for Moses Ezekiel.
Is it his grave marker?
No, but he has an individual marker that sits right below his burial is at the base. There's, as you recall, there's a grave at each of the cardinal sides of the marker of the monument. Each of them have their own markers.
Okay.
As I said up here, who was interred in proximity.
But they are, most of these people are convinced that this was intended to be his grave marker.
Exactly.
How about a sub-theme is the value of the art. It may not be relevant, but it keeps popping up.
Yeah, my sense is that probably...
And it may not be relevant.
I mean,
I think it's more relevant that he was Jewish.
We're not an art gallery.
How about that he was gay?
I don't think we need to go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, on the naming commission
That's how
outside
you
the
really know.
remit,
Yeah, exactly.
were there two issues? One is gravesite, but two, did the naming commission have the authority to literally rename or to tear down monuments? And Renee, you may have an
See if
answer
I
to that.
can find
But
the
right or
actual
wrong, that's one of the
language.
questions they raised, was that they had the authority to actually
Because several of them mentioned that the bases are still standing, that were renamed.
And that's the base of their lawsuit, accurate, or the lawsuit itself?
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
The removal of items that can commemorate the Confederacy was part of their remit. And so the Army, all the
There are
services.
statues that have been taken down.
Statues been taken down at West Point, plaques.
Paintings.
It's all part of it. It's art.
Okay. So that was a question they'd raised, if there's an answer to that.
And, you know,
Okay.
we've had a number of discussions at this committee. So can you slide down again? And I'm just concerned about the interest of the time here, but to get your sense, the committee's perspective, it seems to me that we've got some things that we know. The STAC death decision has been rendered and accepted by Congress. The 106 process is in place. We're not a formal part of that, but we are contributing to it by all of this great testimony we've heard and all the documents that we've received. So that's in progress. There is active litigation.
Make the subject verb agreed.
Yeah. Seeking, not seeing, to have the decision reversed. So there are, I think there are two specific suits.
Two separate suits.
Yeah. And then, so it seems to me, that, you know, as I've listened to all of our discussion, we feel an obligation to make the Secretary aware of the input that we've had, that we note the committee's confidence should the decision be reversed. You know, we don't have the ability to reverse it. That's higher powers, but you know, litigation may lead to that. Who knows? In the ability of ANC staff and our historians to well and adequately provide appropriate historic interpretation to the Confederate memorial, as it does for so much of the history of which ANC is.
Not to wordsmith a draft document, but I think it's context. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, well,
the
that's
staff would provide important context.
That's historic interpretation, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, however you want to say it, Rosemary, it's fine. You're better communicating than I am.
No.
And so, and that, and just to make the point that these interpretations, these contextual interpretations, these kinds of efforts are great additions to the experience of the more than 3 million visitors to ANC every year. And then I think, you know, maybe Chet, there's a chance to get to your point earlier, but first we note that we've had a reservation in this committee about, we heard it from the member subcommittee today. What kind of memorial should we have here? They shouldn't be cause-themed things, because who knows, 10 years, as somebody brought up, you know, so this is, you know, the notion that maybe this isn't the way we would approve memorials in the future is, I think that's kind of how this committee has postured itself so far. So we know the committee's history of reservations and expanding memorials within ANC, not only to preserve burial space, but to avoid cause-themed memorials that might invite recontextualization in the future that would detract from those buried and honored in the hallowed grounds of Arlington. So we don't want to be in this position in the future. I thought getting that in there. Yeah, the other is maybe to add, Jeff, what you had talked about earlier in the committee about, and as somebody brought up, we really weren't invited to be a part of this, but we feel because of the unique nature of Arlington and maybe the inappropriateness of considering it and not considering it unique and separate, and as public policy is made, that special attention be paid to the impact that this may have.
Right.
And this particular one, but the impact of decisions around Arlington. And this committee will appreciate the opportunity to be consulted. However you would word something like that.
We could word it in any way that the whole group would be comfortable, but I'd love to say something along the lines of we feel strongly that Arlington, as you said earlier, is such a unique, meaningful, deeply meaningful and historical site in America that any decision by any organization.
Try to put a 4 on there and capture some of this.
And somebody can word it better than me. Rosemary, you can help on this, but or any of you could. But anyone who in the future makes a decision that affects Arlington, I don't know what wording you put, Arlington in any significant way should carefully take into consideration the iconic, unique nature of Arlington. I just don't want us thrown in with it. There could be another renaming commission.
I know, 100% with you. I think you could call it peerless. I mean, you can call Arlington National Cemetery without peer, right? I mean, it stands alone.
Yes.
In its mission, in its PERLESS. So,
and therefore should be hands off.
well, it should be handled separately and independently of other categories that surround the military and the veteran. I'm not going to say experience, but around other entities. This is a singular entity. This is it's without peer. You can talk about the national cemeteries at VA, but even then, and I don't mean disrespect to the people who brought me to the table, but even that's different.
It's unique.
It's a national.
It's why
it's a national asset.
Yeah, it's why
it's a national shrine, a national asset.
And the argument will be, how is it different from the national cemeteries? And I don't think we have an argument except for, sort of the Justice Potter Stewart method. We're not sure. We'd know it if we saw it, but it is different. And so, and maybe you don't have that argument that it's different from national cemeteries.
Because somebody from probably another nation was coming to lay it. Refit the tomb of the other.
And this other piece that's really important, I think that, what did we call it? It wasn't context, it was interpretation, contextual interpretation. So with X million visitors per year, this is a significant and unequal teachable moment. This is where people come. And it's an opportunity to actually, and we've talked about this, Jerry, where the plaque at the foot of the statue is exactly what you want, right? That's the context. This was where the historian can come in and say, here's what it means in all its warts. So I think that given the number of visitors and the opportunity to promote the story of the Confederacy would be far more impactful if you left it up. I mean, I'm gooning it up, but I think that that's the other piece that keeps A&C
and that's what
different.
We're saying here is if they can do that, that's up to, that's beyond our remit. But
because it goes to their intent. Right. So it goes to their intent. They intend to correct the wrongs of the past and have a clearer and a cleaner way forward, but you can't do that without education. And so this is the opportunity.
Exactly.
For 1.7 million people a year.
I want to get this number 4 here is a little different than this specific piece. This is we're coming after the fact here.
I see what you're saying. Right.
But as we move forward, there's going to be other issues that come up that we think that.
Yes. So it's less about
the unique nature. Yeah.
It's less about what's been decided. It's
Right
more
now,
about
it's
going
going
forward,
forward.
which Chet, that's
That
been
needs
your
a little-
point
that
too.
needs a little
Got it.
There's no,
Okay.
the first sentence, anyone who in the future that affects, we need to wordsmith that a little bit.
Maybe we could start out, and I threw out anyone, I'd take that out. But I think start out with the points, Ann, you made. Arlington, start out with a declarative statement. Arlington National Cemetery is a blank, a unique, iconic national shrine, period. And then say any future decisions that could significantly impact
That status.
that status or could impact Arlington. I don't know how you want. Any that could impact Arlington Cemetery should only be done so
Unilaterally.
after thorough and careful analysis of
Should only be made. Be made.
Arlington, its history, its unique mission to the country. So, and words change that any way you want.
Careful thought and inclusion.
Let me make careful.
Almost unilateral. So
Is it careful or thorough? I mean, what bothers me about this is I don't know, again, how much time the renaming commission spent studying the issue of reconciliation. Maybe DAR had one goal for the lost cause of that monument, but maybe the President of the United States and a lot of others since saw that as a symbol of reconciliation. Did the commission really look at that carefully, reach out to Arlington Cemetery and ask their advice and what, insights they had? I
don't think they talked to you at all, did they?
So they did allow us to brief them on several occasions to include a terrain walk at the memorial, but we were not solicited for our opinion of the decision. One way or another, they wanted the facts surrounding who was buried there. And
right. They weren't asking. Did they ask you give us all the history that your history department knows about the reconciliation aspect of this? Pro and con.
I think we have to let's just be honest about the baby here. Yeah. I think that the commission may have had a tendency to be preordained on this topic. There were historians on the commission whose specialty was this, Civil War.
Right.
I don't think they asked for Arlington historians to interpret for them.
We described the difference between a headstone and a monument or a memorial.
It was all informational.
Yeah, much that you've received. Talked about, we put it in context of the Spanish-American War Memorial, the Nurses Memorial, the Argonne Cross, and those that are buried around those memorials. It was as this committee will remember, it was a turn of the century period where that was common to be done. I just listed the 4 other examples in that general area. So that's what they looked for, was information about the memorial itself, not any context.
So, and to tell the narrative that would have impact, I think the focus is consider Arlington separately in these decisions. I'll give it careful consideration, and then we have to explain why. And then we list the reasons. Right now, we're listing the reasons of the public.
Right.
And so we just have to, and I'm happy to help, we just need 2 or 3 sentences why they need to pull Arlington out of the mix when these decisions are made. And I think we're kind of almost there. My question is, what is the point of what the public said? I mean, they're very good points, but are we...
I think this is our communication to the secretary.
Right.
To make sure the secretary is aware.
Right.
Of the passion, the impact, what we heard, and the general rationale. And that, our position is we could adequately keep it and do an appropriate interpretation for the 3 million visitors a year. And, oh, by the way, we'd like to be on the front end of this instead of on the back end of it. And that's it. This is a message really to the sector. That's what, and that's who we advise. That's our responsibility. And the fact is, they could have asked us before. Well, it was more confusing.
Then I guess the question is, are we looking for a different outcome?
Yeah.
Or are we just looking for a more thoughtful process going forward? Because that's going to determine.
Well, the outcome is going to be determined by the courts right now.
Yes.
And not by us or not by, there's, you know, we're not going to, unless all of these reasons, which we've heard and documented, become compelling somehow.
I don't think we're making a comment on the outcome. I think we're expressing to him what we have heard. I don't think we should. It's not within our remit to make a comment on the outcome. But this is what we've heard. This is how we think it could. This is how we think it could be done better in the future.
So what basically we're saying, here's what the public has to say. There are some good points in here. Regardless of that, this would have been a conversation to have before the decision was made. Essentially is what we're saying, without actually being overt, without being too obvious about it. So we're hearing these conversations. They're impactful.
We could, if the decision is reversed, we can manage it.
Yes.
And then finally, let's not do this again. Let's do it differently.
Going
The process needs to be more thorough, more careful. If I could wordsmith just a little bit, and then I'm thinking out loud here, so we'll decide if we don't like it, but on any future decisions that could significantly impact, and Mark, you said this status, I'm not sure taking down the monument changes the status of Arlington as a peerless, iconic shrine, but it does change Arlington. So if you could say any future decisions that could significantly impact Arlington Cemetery should only be made with careful and thoughtful careful and thorough analysis.
Careful, thorough analysis.
Did you say that, Ann? Say that
I
again?
just suggested careful, thorough analysis.
Okay. An analysis based on the unique mission and history of Arlington Cemetery. And you want to add or not want to add, Rosemary, something like, and not part of process applying to
I would say,
other things.
On its unique mission and place in history. So I know this is all going to get cleaned up, but I think what we're talking about, it's place in history, which resonates back to the statute, right? So
yes,
place in history period, then take off A and C.
And Chet, the
so
yes,
you would get rid of everything after that.
Yeah, and
after history, at least for now, and then see if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean,
but that
you can say without hyperbole that Arlington National Cemetery is unmatched. You know, it is without peer. It has its own place in history.
Well, it's unique, and so you got unique in there.
Yeah, unique. You know, respectfully, I feel like unique is a polite word.
Okay, so ANSI's peerless in its iconic nature.
Iconic, yep. Okay.
And as such, is a unique national shrine.
You got it. That's good. Yeah.
Get rid of that.
Get rid of the ...
I do like the word shrine. I mean, that's the one thing that's going to separate it from
exactly.
We don't need
the
two
NCA
icons. So get rid of the
That really is
second
what
icon.
makes it unique. I mean, it's.
You say the
This is a symbol of a
I like holograms.
Well, you could argue international.
Yeah,
say hologram.
but it's a symbol of
Once you mention that
symbol
again.
of our nation to the world.
That's
No, sir.
No, I love it.
I'm at a disadvantage in this
Bottom line.
academic ping pong.
Based on.
Why don't we say-
Way out of my league.
As such,
IT, apostrophe S.
Gene, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Apostrophe.
Well, the chairman has said, a national symbol, Rosemary national symbol. Can we insert something that would say, we need national public
Sorry,
input?
the things. in
Because
the-
we talk about a national symbol,
Yeah, no,
but we
I guess
haven't
no
said
point.
anything about the nation's input. I mean, we've heard, I don't know how many people come.
And I'm with you, Gene. I think that they could argue that they are getting it. They do have it because they're following the rules of FACA and the register. I think what we're asking is it has to go beyond the standard review process. This requires additional cautious attention.
Right, the expanded, yeah, right.
Yeah. There is plenty of transparency in the processes established by Congress through the FACA and the Federal Register, but this requires additional thought and consideration given the iconic nature of this national or international shrine. It's the last thing that
it is.
is
I
the
think
last
this is-
standing.
One thing Mark mentioned, hallowed ground. If you said ANC is hallowed ground and peerless in its iconic nature and as such is there's something about hallowed ground, shrine and hallowed ground together, kind of, I don't know, but y'all comment. This,
I think the thing that's missing here to me is the role of the committee. And, that's why we were established, is because people didn't pay attention to it. That's not, you go back to this really how this committee got established. And I think it may be worth pointing out here in relation.
Get rid of and.
It ties it back to the whole rest of it is.
You know what? I think you're right, Jim. I think that's where it
Capital
starts.
A.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then it is.
Could we put in there specifically that, Jim?
Yeah, I think we could add it at the end.
Committee is a statutory body. We're a statutory body.
This body
is a statutory body, congressionally mandated
provide-
statutory body.
To provide support for that, for those special considerations.
Could you put, is a congressionally mandated statutory body advisory committee, this committee should be, and then however you want to answer that?
Right at the end.
Yes.
4?
It's not.
No, I think that opening sentence in number 4 should come right out of our charter.
Well,
it should replicate, we're making up we're doing exactly what the naming convention did. We're trying to change the name of Arlington National Cemetery. The charter tells us what we are here to protect. And it should say that. We should say exactly what it tells us we're doing. What are we protecting as the advisory committee? We all use this, the hallowed grounds of the nation's national cemetery. Just say what it is.
Well, it goes back to Jim's question earlier today. What is the ultimate meaning? That's what we got to.
Yeah, I sit here and I go back. I'm thinking 100 years ago, and I think what their intent was to heal the human dimension. Right? Because we've all done that, right? We've sent guys to war, and we know the effect of that human dimension on what that does. And so, whether or not we agree with it, what they were trying to do was heal the human dimension, right? And that's exactly what we're going to do again when we execute this change. Post execution of change, we got to find a way to heal the human dimension.
What change?
It's an interesting thought.
If the monument comes down,
It's the latest effort of a healing nation.
Mark, what I'd say is, I'm not, in the language I put in there, I would want to be clear. I'm not trying to redefine or define Arlington.
no, I know you're not. I know, but I'm just saying, if the language is already there somewhere,
If we can find language, I think if we can add Jim's comment after the in history period, Matt, if we could say,
Is it number 5 or part 4?
I think part 4, Arlington
Well, I think it would be, it might make more of a statement if we make it number 5 and then say whatever we want to say about it.
Part five.
As prescribed by our charter.
As a congressionally mandated.
Just let me just say what it says in our advisory charter. The objective and scope of activities pursuant to Title 10,
Blah, blah,
blah, blah.
That congressionally mandated.
The ACNAC, ACANC provides independent advice and recommendations on matters relating to Arlington National Cemetery, as set forth in section 4 below, which says we will make periodic reports and recommendations to the Secretary, administration, the erection of memorials, master planning, and the Secretary shall consult with ACNAC before approving the design of any monument placed within Arlington National Cemetery.
Wow.
Wow.
Or designing any monument added, so we should be,
Yeah, if you're gonna
my
add.
logic should be.
I just think that this independent advice and recommendations on matters relating to Arlington Cemetery is why we're here. And we weren't consulted and think we should be consulted in advance, so that we're not.
I think you could say as a congressionally, the ACANC, comma, as a congressionally mandated advisory committee.
Is chartered.
Want to put
is
that
chartered
language?
To blah, blah, blah.
Good.
Yeah, put it in
You
quote,
can
the
put that
quote the charter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is chartered. Is that what you're gonna say? Is mandated? You can say is mandated.
Mandated chartered.
Chartered.
And then
Chartered.
and then use the quote.
Yeah,
Should we
chartered.
quote the document?
Congressionally chartered.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
I
That's
like
good.
mandated better.
Oh, okay.
Is
Usually
chartered.
mandated
Yep.
through
Is-
charter.
Is chartered.
Quote, chartered to, and then put in the direct quotes from the, from the
Are you ready, Matt?
language.
Yeah.
Quotes, provide independent advice and recommendations on matters relating to Arlington National Cemetery. Dot with quotes.
Period. Yeah. And we weren't.
So,
Right? And we weren't.
We actually didn't exist when this happened.
Right.
During the
And
period.
stand
It was
ready
in the law.
to,
so to bring it home, we're telling them that we should have been,
And should be involved.
going
Before, not
forward.
after.
And that the process was flawed because we weren't, but they can turn around and say, well, we didn't exist.
Right. Again, this is not so much about.
No, and should be,
past process.
and
This
should
is
be,
something we can for this,
and should
but
be
this is
included. Just
We
going to
existed
say,
after the naming commission was authorized. When was the naming commission?
While we were
so we were in,
20 to
Oh, it was during the,
yeah.
okay, I get it.
So then we just finish it out by saying
Yeah.
we should be included in the,
And-
however you want to say it.
You said and, right?
Yeah, so,
And?
provide independent advice, blah, blah. They say provide independent advice, recommendation on matters relating to our national cemetery. As such, included future decisions of this
So what
magnitude.
is our answer then if they said we would have if you were activated?
So it doesn't matter.
Right.
In any future decisions of this magnitude.
Because I feel like they can throw this out and just say, well, we would have, but there, you weren't.
Yeah, well, they-
Yeah, but this is talking about how
But
we put it on.
we've done our,
Okay.
we've met our obligation to actually bring this to the Secretary.
I see where you're, okay, got it. Okay,
And just reminding them that, don't get this way again, you know?
right.
So it was the 2021 NDAA that established the commission.
When will we formally,
November 22 was your first meeting under the new charter.
I know, but when will we formally stood down? When will we absolved formally?
February of
2020, right after inauguration.
Right after inauguration.
2021.
Yes, 2021.
Yeah, 2021, the election was 2020.
And when was the naming commission decision made?
It was in the 2021 NDAA,
Which,
and then they had a suspense of September. So it was,
yeah, but when was the 21 NDAA signed? It's signed in 20, right?
right, that's why I say it's
But that-
it was
we were
established in
still,
20.
we were still a body then.
Correct.
Well, that was to establish the naming commission. They hadn't done their work.
Yeah, they were collecting.
No, but by that though, sir, they should have, because we were still in existence, we should have been one of the things on the list that they consulted, right? That's all I'm getting at. I'm not arguing it. But if it was signed the day,
But
if it was signed,
it wasn't, they had to form the commission. And then the commission had a year to work to submit their recommendation. So they submitted their recommendations in September of 22,
So
and they
we
were
not-
effective in December of 22.
So we were not in existence when they were, but regardless of that timing, this 5 still is applicable,
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah, because it's about the future.
Is everybody comfortable with that language? I know nothing's perfect, but
It gets
that
the point
pretty well
across.
summarizes what I was thinking when I
So this last
expressed my thoughts
line,
earlier.
decisions of this magnitude, could they interpret that to mean, well, something that's not a larger magnitude we can do without
Yeah.
consulting the committee?
Yeah,
So in other words,
Yeah.
should be included
In the future,
regarding any decision.
right, should be.
Going
included.
back, like you said,
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah,
exactly, we
decisions.
said in 4 before.
Yeah,
That
any
affect-
decisions,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Any
All
future
decisions
decisions.
regarding Arlington.
Any, yeah,
That could significantly impact Arlington, is what you're saying. And, we can't,
And all
we're
future
not in
decisions.
day-to-day activities. We don't want to be there. I mean, this is about,
So after decisions, Matt said that could significantly impact Arlington. Is that?
well, let's see, we've got it in the paragraph above. Any future decisions
Okay.
could significantly impact Arlington.
Pull that sentence
So
down.
do you want to just stop after decisions, or do you want to put
I,
that could significantly impact?
I say you stop at
Yeah,
decisions.
stop at
Okay.
decisions.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
If it's at their level, then it's already
Yeah,
significant.
exactly.
Less wiggle room, as
You know,
you
this-
say, Jerry.
The Secretary of the Army, as y'all all know, is so incredibly busy. I don't know how much he or she spent studying this, and maybe this memo will cause them to stop and think, hey, wait a minute. That's right. For Arlington, we should think through that.
I think the point is, that it's the SecDef that made this decision.
Yes.
I don't know the interplay between the Sec Army and SecDef on this decision, but it is her responsibility. Arlington is her responsibility. So,
Right.
and I think this is, she can take this to him or whatever. I mean, but this puts us on record, I think.
Do we CF it to SecDef?
Say what?
Do we CF it to the SecDef?
No. Well, also, we don't know if it came from the White House and he's
Oh, of course.
following orders too.
Look, let me just go back and add, I mean, this is, again, for the committee. Have we captured the messaging appropriately here, do you think? Or are you comfortable with it? I mean, because, we can give authority for the words.
Wordsmithing and grammar to be corrected.
Clean up, but in terms of the messaging, I just want to
I
make
think
sure.
the
that
message
we're-
is appropriate.
It's
It's appropriate. It's appropriate. And it is our responsibility to tell her what the inputs is.
Sure.
Right.
Do you want a motion?
Well, my original concern was that we were totally silent on the issue. And we need to say something. I think this gets to, we have now spoken as a committee. Here's what we see.
That was kind of what's hoping. Because I thought I forget who was it made the comment about, I've been searching your website. You guys said you were going to do something. You didn't, there's nothing out there. So,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's our
I'm okay with
responsibility.
that.
And I think this is appropriate, and I'll finish this. Whether someone opposes taking down the Confederate memorial for the reasons mentioned by the individuals today, or whether for different reasons, that they believe that's, they want to be able to point out that this discuss the lost cause or symbolize the lost cause of the South, and someone disagrees with the lost cause. So whichever way you come from, I think this is talks about a much better process than what we've had.
Concur.
And I would like to go back on, there's someplace in here, we've got, we've heard from the different societies, and I just want to.
So we'll capture, if we
Like
can,
the
we'll go back.
Society for the Preservation of Jewish Civil War, I never even heard of it before, but I mean.
But we'll add
Don't want
in,
to short them.
right here, we'll put as many that we can tell from the letters that we received.
Do you want a motion that allows staff to clean up the details?
And then who will sign it? I need a motion for who's.
I believe the general should sign it.
Co-chair.
Co-chairs, I'm sorry.
We've done it before when we try to do unanimous signatures. which
No.
I don't
You two
think-
represent us.
If that's okay with you guys. Just
Is there any need for an additional chop on it? I mean, just a,
Well, you'll see it again before it's signed.
okay. Happy to line edit or help any way I can.
To go back to Sergeant Major's question. We're sending this to the Secretary of the Army. Well, are we gonna commit, some umbrage here if we CC a copy to SecDef or somebody else?
Yes, if I was the Secretary of the Army and you CC SecDef, I'd kick your ass.
That's a protocol.
Well, it's not our role. That may be, but, if it was
It's
to
a
be.
worthy question. It's a
if
worthy
it was-
question.
It just leaked out. I don't know how.
No,
it
Mark,
got out the
you wouldn't do
committee,
that.
but-
You would,
It's
if
gonna
you
be a
work for
public
Renee, you're not gonna
document because
CC Renee's boss.
This will become a public document.
He's mad enough at me.
It will be on the website.
Sergeant Major,
Well,
do that, man.
But let's,
Well, not, okay, that's different, all right.
but let's
Right?
just,
That's
I'm
different.
not a commander, right?
wait, I want to make sure that we're clear.
You're about to get away with it.
Internal memo is Latin for leak. So however it's written, we
This-
must be very clear.
This
and
is a
comfortable.
public document.
Document.
Yeah.
We're doing this in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all still on
They're
there.
still
We're on
on.
there.
And
We're just not letting them talk.
I need to remind everyone that anything you produce will be put on the website.
Yeah,
On the
that's right.
website.
That's right.
So it
That's
is
right.
You see it anyway.
it's all a public document.
I love that. I love
They're probably
transparency.
watching right now.
Well,
Especially
And
the
on the
dog.
way, it'll go to Congress.
The dog's
because it's
watching.
part of our,
Oh, okay.
Basic.
Okay, thank
We know
you.
that.
Jim, help
I think
word
we're
this in
comfortable
a way
with
that
this.
you'd be comfortable with. I could move that the staff from these talking points draft a letter to be signed by the co-chairs, which will be reviewed first by all the advisory committee members.
I think rather than having them draft something different, I think adding, the clarifications that we've asked in terms of
Right.
the numbers of communication, the number of people who have spoken, those kinds of things, and a grammatical,
Clean it up.
grammatical review is what we want.
Okay.
I don't want them to rewrite this.
Okay.
No,
So-
it'll be put on, so I'll revisit. It'll be put on, your letterhead, gentlemen. It'll be signed much like you sign your reports to the secretary. It'll be on your letterhead, with your names, both at the bottom for signatories. We will clean it up and put it in the right format. It's just a formatting, challenge. And then we will go through and make sure that this BA, is that what that is? My eyes are blurry for me.
Yeah.
We'll add the other organizations that we've heard from, the ones that have identified themselves, we will add those.
I so move.
I hear a second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous acceptance.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Now, Sergeant Major, you didn't eye. Are you eyeing?
I've raised my hand.
Any other, before we adjourn, any other comments for the committee?
I just want to say one thing. And this is kind of a little, compliment. It's an honor to drive in here to be able to do that night. When I came in this morning, it was before any funerals or any visitors or anything. And it is an overwhelming experience to come into this cemetery.
Here.
It is
Yeah.
like nothing else ever. It's just, and if more American people can come here and see it, I think it would just be fabulous.
And I'm still teaching part-time at Baylor, and I find students are so cynical about government, politics, and we all know our nation's divided. And when I get down in those moments, I think about Arlington, and it's just uplifting. I wish, as you said, student, I wish every American could come visit Arlington and just think about our country.
Because you don't take any sides when you come here.
There is a spirit of unity, a uniting,
Yes.
uniting, what we're going for. The spirit of unity here at Arlington, where gender or skin color has no, it's not important, right?
Right.
We're all Americans, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah, you're not a Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, I don't know if those people buried are Democrats or Republicans.
You don't put them on the headstone.
No, they serve their country.
Yep.
It's fabulous. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for a remarkable day.
What I'm reminded about is to check your calendars for our proposed next meeting of 7 to 9 November. Everybody,
Let me
check.
Mr. Kelly still with us? Mr. Kelly, sir?
I have to scoot. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary.
Matt, can you still?
Be careful. Driving home. You betcha. Yeah, okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You know what? But I wouldn't want this to stop everything. I may have a quarterly company board meeting. Let me check.
Yeah, I need to check.
Yeah, if you, I would just check and let Renee know.
We're checking for
We'll
that.
find another.
We're checking for that period, maybe a week before that week. We'd like to target that time period for the next full committee meeting.
Do we want to continue to do it on one day, the committee meetings and the full committee meeting?
No, sir.
Want to take 2 days yeah, because you guys didn't, you said y'all didn't have enough time to.
We need to allow the subcommittees enough time to work. And we'll work through the subcommittee chairs on coming up with the right tempo and topics for the next few meetings.
Okay.
All right, we stand adjourned.
All right,
Thank you very
well
much.
done.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.